Hey, Barry Schaefer here, founder and director of Inward Resources. You may have heard the buzz about a recent publication of a manuscript fragment, which is just a little tiny piece of manuscript from the Gospel of Mark. And some have claimed that it's the oldest known New Testament manuscript, even older than the famous fragment from the Gospel of John, housed in the Rylands Library in England. Well, the Mark fragment was a part of a discovery around 1900 of an ancient garbage dump in Egypt. The dump contained common household items and a treasure trove of ancient Greek text. We're talking things like receipts, grocery lists, and Greek scripture. Well, it turns out that the Mark fragment isn't as old as originally thought, but it is still the oldest known fragment from the Gospel of Mark, and that is significant. Now, I'm not a manuscript scholar, and I don't play one on TV. I'm more of maybe a manuscript enthusiast, just out of my curiosity and pursuit of good Bible engagement. But what makes all this kind of cool is the fact that, we have no original writings of the New Testament, or the Old Testament for that matter. The best we have are copies of the originals. So the oldest copy, which is closer to the original, the better. What strikes me, we've always had this gap between the original recordings of the events of the New Testament and the earliest copy of those recordings. And I think we always will have that gap. Because in Hebrews 11:6, we're told this: without faith, it is impossible to please God. Impossible. And yet, we have this drive to reason our way to God, to prove factually that He exists. I think this is the motivation behind our pursuit of things like the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, Noah's Ark. But in God's providence, I think that these artifacts may never be found. And we may never get to those original manuscripts of the New Testament either. The reason why? Faith pleases God. I think it's God's way of giving us something we can do that we know pleases Him. So when we've pieced together all the facts and the reasoning that we can to connect the distance between our hearts and our brains, and when we find we've come up just a little bit short, we see this gap. And when we step over that gap or fill that gap with faith, we are pleasing God. I say we continue the pursuit of artifacts and original manuscripts. That stuff's just fun, and there's great payoff along the way. But even as that gap gets smaller, the journey to God will always include a step of faith. And it doesn't matter if that gap is 1 inch or a mile. Faith is faith. So rather than being afraid of that final step that includes faith, maybe we can accept the gap for the gift that it really is. An opportunity to please God. Thanks for checking in. I pray that this holy wow thought is as fruitful for you as it has been for me. Thank you.